Community is a word that has a lot of different definitions, but I think most definitions would agree that any group of people who have persistent communications with each other over time, who form relationships, and at least some of whom care about each other, partakes in community.
All right.
Community is a word that has a lot of different definitions, but I think most definitions would agree that any group of people who have persistent communications with each other over some period of time in which relationships form partakes of community to some degree. So I think arguing over whether a digital community is a real community or not is, in a sense, a false argument. You have to ask about that specific community. Do people have persistent communications with each other over a period of time instead of just, let's say, an hour or a day, and whether they form relationships over time? I think any community, whether it's your next door neighbor or someone that you never meet but you communicate with online, if you have communications over a period of time, you exchange information, you help each other, you answer questions for each other, you offer emotional support to each other, that really does partake of community. The important element really is not the technology, but the human relationships.
What do you think? What are the main the specificities of a community?
Well, I don't think that you can have community unless you have a persistent identity. Now, a lot of online communities, people have identities that are not the same as their real name, the name on their passport. But as long as that's the name that they always use, then that enables them to have a reputation. Can you trust what this person says today based on what they said yesterday? Whether or not the name they use is the same as the name on their passport, it's important that they have a persistent identity. I think that that's a requirement, whatever technology you use. Otherwise, you could have games or anonymous communications, and there are examples where anonymous communications are important. Like, let's say you're someone whose spouse is abusing them, or you are someone seeking help for a substance abuse problem, or you are reporting on some kind of corruption. You may want to be anonymous, and that's useful, but you can't really build a community on that. So I think persistent identity and communications that continue. If it's a chat room and you go there every day or every week, or it's a message board and it continues for years and years, or it's a gaming community in which you continue to participate, then that's important. Now, there are all kinds of levels. If someone in this group needs help of some kind, whether it's information or money or some kind of emotional support, and other people offer it, I think that builds a strength in the community. And quite often, communities are not really about personalities, they're about a shared interest. So I think that's another important element, is what is the shared interest? The shared interest might be some subject you study in the university. It might be politics or health or sports or games or your neighborhood. That's really what draws people together, is what is the interest that they share. Although there are communities that are very general, in which people discuss many different kinds of things, there's always a kind of flavor to that. Are they young people? Are they people who speak a certain language? Are they people who have a certain occupation? There has to be something that draws them together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. And maybe what do you think about the blogs, the web blogs and the wikis and that are appearing, and the chat? Well, these are different technologies that are doing a lot of for this community building. What do you think? How this will evolve? I mean,
well, blogs are a form of publication. To the degree that blogs have comments on them, or they have forums where people can suggest what to blog, then that affords communication. But I think blogs in their earliest stages don't do that kind of group communication as well as something like a message board or a listserv or a chat room. But I think, in answer to your question about how they will evolve, I think we'll see the communications capacities of blogs are going to develop. Now, there is a community aspect to blogs in that most blogs have blog roles that list other blogs that you can find, and almost every blog links in a post to some other site online, quite often a blog, so that there's a community aspect to blogs that are about a certain subject, or blogs in which people either agree with each other or disagree with each other, have a connection. A connection is not the same thing as having comments or chat, but there's a community aspect to it. But I think what's important about blogs is that it gives many more people the ability to publish their opinions and to filter the net, to recommend to others what they think is important and explain why. What's useful about wikis is that they're very easy ways to create documents on the web for people who may not have other ways to do that. That's an easy way to do it. We've seen collective wikis used as informational resources like Wikipedia, or people can use it to try to have group editing of documents. But again, wikis have, in their earliest stages, don't have highly evolved means of communication, of commenting or chatting. But again, I think we will see that evolve. We've seen every communication or publishing form online has evolved from the very first simplest forms. As people see ways to improve it, they improve it. And that's the great advantage of the openness of the web, is nobody has to ask permission to create an improvement. So in a sense, there's an evolution that goes on that's similar to biological evolution. The things that work for a lot of people, they survive. Things that don't work for a lot of people don't survive.
Okay. Sorry. In your last book, you talk about the smart bulbs. Could you explain a little bit what is a smart bulb and how do you relate it with your the older book?
A short definition of a smart mob is a group of people who use mobile communications and or the internet to organize collective action. Now, collective action could be political demonstrations, as we saw happen in Spain and other places around the world, in the Philippines and Korea and the USA. The electoral process has been affected by people organizing politically. But it could be social. I think most teenagers in the world use their SMS and their mobile phones to just decide where they're going to go after school. And I think that there's a connection between what may seem fairly trivial, which is young people deciding where to go to socialize, and something very serious like a political demonstration. Both of those are examples of people who are able to organize activities in the face-to-face world using the capabilities of the communication technology. Now, in English, smart and mob have multiple meanings. So smart could mean intelligent, or it can also mean technically enhanced. And mobs, they have a little bit of a dangerous connotation, like a fascist mob or a riot. So I did want to convey in the title that not all groups who organize collective action have socially positive ends in mind. Terrorists and criminals can also use the same ability to organize collective action as well. I want people to recognize the opportunities that technology makes available, but I don't want to present this as a kind of utopian tool that only has benefits. There are also dangers, and that's what I wanted to signal in the title of the book.
Okay, I see. And do you think this there is a social value of this online community, as you have said? But do you think this sociability online could these digital communities could break the digital divide? Is this, and also, do you think this is a symptom of an emergent democracy?
Well, two different questions.
Yeah,
okay,
two different questions, but related.
I'll talk about the digital divide first. There are two kinds of divides. There's being able to afford to have the technology or access to the technology. And then there's a kind of literacy. Do you know how to use that technology? And increasingly, the cost of access to the internet, or the cost of access to telephone communications, or text SMS communications, that's dropping very rapidly. Many more telephones in the world than personal computers. Many people who can't afford a personal computer have telephones. In fact, in China, there are public recharging stations for mobile telephones for people who can afford to have a telephone, but they don't have electricity. So I think the telephone, the mobile telephone, is a key to bridging the digital divide in many areas of the world. But do people know how to use that to organize, to get the kind of information that they need to get work when they need work? I think that is a matter of literacy, and that's something that spreads from person to person, but it's also a matter of public education. Emergent democracy. I think it's important that people not engage in magical thinking or superstitious thinking around technology. That just having a technology is not going to make a democracy healthier. But we've seen that certain kinds of technology have made democracies less healthy. The dominance of television and radio and newspapers, which are controlled by a small number of people and which are expensive to have access to, has really meant that in democracies around the world, the people who have the most money to have the most access have the most advantage in elections. And also, I think most people know, although most people don't always recognize, that you can make a television advertisement that is very attractive, but is not true. It's easy to manipulate people's opinions, people's emotions with short, image-laden messages. Democracy, I think, really depends on having a population who have at least a minimum education so that they can understand what issues are, and they can know when their leaders are lying to them, and some means of communicating with each other instead of just passively receiving what's broadcast to them. So that depends on having a free press and having a press that's not a monopoly, having multiple sources of information so that those sources can disagree with each other and keep each other honest. But I thought it also depends on there being some forum for citizens to argue and debate. Now, sometimes that takes places in cafes or bars or taverns. Sometimes it takes place in organized activities. But I think the great opportunity and potential of the internet is that it enables people to have ongoing conversations and debates with people they agree with and people they don't agree with. Whether or not this potential will increase participation in democracy or it will be overcome by the power of broadcast media is not certain. It depends on people exercising that opportunity.
My last question is, okay, we are right now, lots of things have changed since the .com crashed down and many utopias falling down, as for example the utopia of the democracy, that internet will bring us democracy, and also even the virtual reality utopia. Do you think this virtual reality utopia has fallen down? I mean, years ago, everybody was expecting the virtual reality to change everything and to, as you pointed out also years ago. What do you think? The virtual reality and all these techno utopias have evolved. Where are we right now after these utopias falling down or changing or adapting? Well,
let me talk about the utopian ideas in the .com crash first. I think a lot of attention was brought to the internet around the huge amounts of money that some people were making, and when that economic bubble burst and that was no longer the case, a lot of people felt that the promise of the internet was not going to be achieved. But I'll point out that two of the most interesting developments of the internet recently, the blogs and wikis, came after the .com crash and are not really economic. They're not things that very many people do to make money, but they are things that people do to express themselves and learn things and to find their way through the internet. The internet was not built for economic reasons, and the web was created by a lot of people putting up websites with links to other websites long before there were venture capitalists involved. So I think we have to distinguish between what gets a lot of attention in the news media and what people are actually doing. And I think you can tell from the awards that were given at Ars Electronica for digital communities that people are doing very, very many valuable things that are not necessarily commercial using the internet. There are support groups for people with diseases. There are people exercising democracy online. There are small businesses who are able to survive when maybe they wouldn't otherwise. There are cultural preservation efforts that are multiplied by the ability to use the medium. So I think it's important for people to keep in mind that not everything that's important is something that you can make a profit from, and that doesn't mean that it's an unsuccessful technology if there isn't a new billionaire every day. Now, virtual reality, I think the idea of virtual reality was sort of a metaphor for a lot of people. The emergence of what's sometimes called digital culture, of people creating culture using the tools that the personal computer and the internet make available. That was very attractive to people, and I think that that has not only not gone away, but has expanded. The idea that immersive virtual worlds will become extremely widespread, that is something that has failed to materialize. And of course, when I wrote about virtual reality in 1991, I noted that in order for virtual realities to really be effective, it's going to take 10 or 20 years for the technology to catch up with the dream. What we've seen is that there are a couple of areas in which virtual reality technology has proved to be useful. In science and medicine, people use that to practice surgery, to try to understand how to make new pharmaceuticals by manipulating molecules. Those are things that only specialists really have access to. And the other big use of and successful use of virtual reality has been in training for people in the military. So there are destructive and constructive uses, but they've been confined to specialists so far. And I think in the long run that's probably always going to be the case, that the particular use of immersive virtual worlds is mostly going to be used by specialists. I left gaming out, but I think games are another important aspect to it. But you know, virtual reality has not happened, but all of these other forms like virtual communities and blogs and wikis, and now we're seeing people using SMS to organize. All of these things have emerged from the capabilities that information and communication technologies make possible. Utopia still has not arrived, but that's the nature of utopia, is that it's a dream. And to some degree, dreams are good things to have. To another degree, it's dangerous to try to live in a dream or to mistake a dream for reality. So I think the whole world is undergoing a kind of education process about expectations of technology and the reality of technology. And I think it's good to see some failures so that people can think critically about the next technology that comes along and what's promised for it.
And which is the book you are dreaming on right now? Your next book?
Well, when I wrote Smart Mobs, part of that had to do with new understandings of cooperation and collective action. In biology and economics, sociology, even computer science and mathematics, we're seeing new understandings of how people cooperate, what are the obstacles to people cooperating, how do people use technologies together. I think like the web is a great example. No one said, let's build the web. People said, I can put up a website and link to others, but the result of millions of people doing that is this very useful, emergent phenomenon of the web. So I'm interested in understanding more about that. I think we have very little understanding, really, about human cooperation and the obstacles to it. I don't think utopia is going to arrive when we understand more about it, but when we understood more about biology, medicine was able to cure diseases that people thought were caused by evil spirits or sin or foreigners. So I think that we'll be able to do some beneficial things, having a greater understanding of cooperation. So I call it the Cooperation Project, and I'm just starting to try to bring together people to discuss these things, and I don't know where it will end. Ask me in a few more years.
Okay, so many thanks.
Sure.
We would love you if you write this book, because I think this is a subject that everybody is really interested in. I'm looking forward to see.
Oh, great!
What will happen. As a matter of fact, yeah. Well, that's it.